All right, let's step right onto the pitch. Welcome to our deep dive into the high-intensity chess match that is modern football tactics. If you've ever watched a top-tier match and wondered how a team suddenly, almost magically, just rips through a seemingly bulletproof defense, well, you are in exactly the right place. Today, we're not just watching the ball, we're going to uncover the invisible architecture of the game. So think about this for a second. What exactly happens in the very first 5 seconds after a team loses possession? In the modern game, this tiny, fleeting little window of time is absolutely everything. It completely dictates the flow of the match, and honestly, it's what separates the true champions from everybody else. Okay, let's dive into this. Here is our roadmap for today. We're hitting 1, the 5-second rule, 2, the geometry of control, 3, breaking defensive lines, 4, the rest defense shield, and finally, 5, heavy metal in action. Section 1, the 5-second rule and defensive transitions. 5 seconds, that's literally it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. If your team loses the ball while attacking, you have exactly 5 seconds to launch this relentless, immediate counterpressure to win it right back. This rule, which was heavily popularized by Pep Guardiola back in his Barcelona days, is all about hunting in a pack. If you don't recover that ball before those 5 seconds are up, the strategy instantly flips. You abort the press, commit a tactical foul if you have to, and immediately fall back into a traditional defensive block. It's breathless, it's chaotic, but man, it is deeply strategic. But hey, what happens if that immediate central pressure just fails? The defending team doesn't just give up. The tactical response is to aggressively force the play outward. Defenders capitalize on the physical boundaries of the pitch. By narrowing up the center, they funnel the opposition towards the outer corridors. Once the ball is near the edge, they execute these coordinated movements to trap the opponent, basically using the sideline as an extra defender. It chokes out the counterattack by literally running them out of room. Moving on to Section 2, geometry of control and spatial evaluations. Let's slow down for a second and catch our breath. We talked about time, but to truly dominate, teams have to master space. Enter the Voronoi diagram. Imagine an invisible board layered right over the grass. A Voronoi diagram partitions the pitch based on exactly where everyone is standing. Every single player becomes a central point, and the zone surrounding them represents the exact space they can reach before anyone else. If the ball enters a player's Voronoi cell, theoretically, they control it. It's kind of like a super calculated game of musical chairs. This invisible geometry is what dictates who actually owns the pitch. And it is so fascinating to see this invisible math applied to a real match. Take Sergio Osaka's Kapasaba, for example. When he gets on the ball, imagine those Voronoi cells mapped out around the defense. He spots this tiny, almost invisible sliver of vulnerability in the opponent's geometry. In an absolute flash, his teammate, Maikuma, makes a forward run right through those intersecting cells, receiving the pass in completely open space behind the defenders. They beautifully manipulate this mathematical space to pull off a devastating maneuver. All right, Section 3, breaking defensive lines. That maneuver we just talked about, that's what we call a line break, where offensive players physically shatter the defensive geometry to create huge scoring chances. Think about a traditional back four. Now imagine the space between the rearmost defender and the guy right next to him. Coaches actually call this line gap 3. When the attacking team pulls just one single defender out of position, they stretch that line gap 3, creating a massive void in the defense. It's like pulling a load-bearing brick out of a wall. Suddenly, there's a totally clear path for an attacker to sprint straight through. But, just seeing the gap isn't enough. You have to execute. And the critical factor here is absolute speed. The data shows that the forward velocity of the offensive players making runs into those gaps is what actually breaks the defense. The faster those attackers move toward the goal the exact moment the pass is played, the more effectively they shatter the line. It's this perfect marriage of elite spatial awareness and explosive physical speed. Which brings us to Section 4, the rest defense shield, or as the Germans call it, Restfeldsicherung. Okay, so we know how teams attack space, but what about the guys left behind? How do they stop the opponent from doing the exact same thing if they lose the ball? That is rest defense. This is the art of spare field coverage. Even while a team is throwing bodies forward into the final third, they are deliberately positioning deep players in optimal spaces behind the ball. It stops opposition counterattacks before they even spark. Think of rest defense as the heavy shield that allows your sword to strike safely. The really crucial part is how this shield is built. It's highly organized into layers. The first line is usually 2 to 3 deep players, like your center backs, who offer pure security. The second line hovers around the edge of the opponent's penalty box, perfectly positioned to scoop up loose balls and immediately trigger that 5-second counterpress we talked about. And notice the focus, teams prioritize packing the center and the half spaces, purposely leaving the outer wings completely uncovered. Why? Because honestly, a counterattack down the extreme wide areas is way less dangerous and takes much longer to develop. Now, teams generally pull this off in one of 2 ways. Man-to-man rest defense is highly reactive. Defenders just follow the opponent's resting attackers around. But that's super risky. If a smart attacker just wanders out wide, he pulls the defender right out with him, opening up a massive central gap for a counter. Zonal rest defense, on the other hand, specifically using a 2-2 box structure with 2 center backs and 2 holding midfielders, is so much more robust. It proactively locks down the central zones no matter where the attackers are standing, keeping the core heavily protected. And finally, Section 5, heavy metal in action. Let's ramp the energy back up and bring all these abstract concepts right down to the grass. When you map out the passing networks from a top-tier match, Trent Alexander-Arnold's impact just jumps right out at you. He has this massive, highly accurate passing range on the right side of the pitch. He doesn't just pass the ball, he commands the geometry of the field, deliberately bypassing defenders to feed the ball precisely into high-value zones. He uses these incisive through balls and massive switches of play to completely bypass the opposition's rest defense. It's elite vision. And this passing allows wide forwards like Mohamed Salah to make these devastating inward runs right into those vulnerable line gaps. Once Salah gets the ball in those pockets of space, his elite physical dribbling skills just take over, and he carves through disorganized defenders before they even have a chance to recover. But of course, all of this attacking brilliance is built on the foundation of Jurgen Klopp's famously intense heavy metal football. This entire high-octane setup relies absolutely on relentless physical execution the exact second the ball is lost. It requires phenomenal athletic endurance from every single player to execute that 5-second counter press, forcing the opposition wide or winning the ball back instantly to launch another attack before the defensive geometry can even reset. So, what's the bottom line here? Modern tactical dominance is no longer just about writing a 4-3-3 on a locker room whiteboard. It's about mastering the geometry of the pitch. It's manipulating Voronoi cells, breaking lines with sheer physical velocity, and layering a bulletproof rest defense, all while operating against a ruthless 5-second ticking clock. It is time, space, and elite physical execution perfectly combined. Which leaves us with this final thought. The greatest minds in the sport have built this incredibly complex system of pressing, space control, and geometry. But sports are always evolving, right? So the next time you watch a match, I challenge you to look past the ball. Look for the invisible structures. Look for the rest defense, those frantic 5-second scrambles, the sudden gaps in the line. And ask yourself, if this is the ultimate puzzle of modern football today, what brilliant tactical evolution is going to come along tomorrow to completely shatter it?